completely. I still have not found you, and I believe I have put my own life and safety in jeopardy. I am now writing in your little red book, Learn Wisely. This is the first opportunity I have had to write in a long while. I could not risk it before. None of them can read, I am fairly certain, but I could be wrong. I shudder to think about what would happen to me should someone discover my secret. I used the few coins I had to send this little green book to Ami. I gave it to a man at the airport, a man with a flower stand. I handed him the coins along with the book. I had penciled in Ami's address. I pleaded with him. I hoped he did what I asked. I had to whisper. The men were busy with the younger children, so I had only a moment. That was many days ago, maybe weeks. I have lost track of time. I think they drugged us at the building just before we left for the airport. They brought around tea, but it tasted strange. I felt dizzy after. I knew I should run away then, but I couldn't manage to do anything except to give my first book, the green book, to the man. At the airport, 2 men and 2 women claimed all of us as their children. That was what our papers said, even though some of the children spoke a different language than our parents. Than their parents. And in the days before we left the airport, Talat, the little boy who asked me if my parents were dead, stayed close to me. He is smaller than you. I tried to figure out a way to get him from the smugglers, but someone was at the door all the time, even when we slept. They fed us runny white beans. I ate as little of it as I could, and instead sucked on the dates sucked on the dates I had brought. I gave Talat one too, along with Yusuf. Yusuf is a little older than the rest of the boys. I think he may have been picked for the same reason I was, to look good in case the authorities came around. He said he was 12, but I think he is older. Yusuf said his father had sold him, but he had promised to visit him. Do you know where we're going then? I whispered. No, he said, but my Baba must. He looked frightened. My Baba must know where we're going, right? I don't know, I said. I did not want to lie to these children. I hope so. Every morning, repeat your name, and the names of the members of your family. Say the name of the town where you lived. Before and after prayers, say your name and the names of your relatives. Say it in your language. Don't forget your language. They did not like us talking to one another, so we did not say much. More than once I wanted to run away, Umar, but I kept thinking of you in a place like this, without a big sister or big brother to look after you. Then they gave us the tea, and I felt dizzy and sleepy. They drove us to the airport. I had never been to the airport. I wanted to be excited by it, but I felt half asleep. All of the children shuffled around the same way. None of them cried. The so-called parents held the hands of some of the children. I tried to keep Talat close to me. When we went to the flower stand, I saw a man with kind eyes, so I pressed the green book into his hands and quickly pleaded with him. I could not wait to see what he said or did. One of the men grabbed me by the ear and pushed me back into the group of children. We got on the plane. Soon after, I heard a roar. My stomach felt light. When I looked out the window, I saw we were over land. I wanted to remember every detail so that I could tell you, and we could compare when we were together again. But I could not keep my eyes open. Talat had already fallen asleep with his little self leaning against me. I did not know where Yusuf was. They only let Talat stay with me because he would cry otherwise. I did not know how long we flew or what we flew over. I thought of the magic carpet from the Arabian Nights and decided it would be more fun than this sleepy plane ride. I fell right to sleep. We landed in the desert, this I know. In Bedouin land, I was certain. The blonde sand cascaded this way and that like a giant scarf wrapped around a woman's head and shoulders. I kept tripping over my feet as I walked away from the plane toward a white van. I picked up Talat because he was still sleeping like I used to pick you up when you were younger. I was afraid I would drop him, but we were soon in the van. Our drugged weariness sharpened into nausea, and nearly all the boys began vomiting. I won't describe any more of that trip. I don't really want to think of it. Sometime later, the van stopped at the camel training camp. The driver of the van pushed us out of the vehicle and into the desert. Everywhere I turned, I saw desert, camels, and young boys. A roaring man came out from one of the tin stacks scattered about the camp. Yes, he roared, Umar, like a wild animal. We shrank back from him. Talat whimpered and ran behind me. I am Zayd, and you will do whatever I tell you, or I will beat you. The first time. The second time you disobey me, I will take you out into the desert and leave you for the vultures that will pick your bones dry while you are still alive. He had a thick accent, so I wasn't certain if everyone understood his words, but they knew his intent. In the near distance, the boys watched over us, or the other boys watched us. They were all small. Many stood with arms crossed, and their faces looked hard. squinted looking for you, but you were not among these first faces. Our group was separated into 3 groups of 5. One of the older boys showed the 5 of us to a shack where we would sleep at night. It was hot, dark, and smelly inside. A dirty blanket and piece of carpet covered the floor of sand here and there. The older boy took us to a ditch behind the shacks, our latrine. A latrine is a restroom. I had never seen anything like it, Umar, and hoped to never see or smell anything like it again. He warned us not to go out into the desert because of the deadly snakes and even deadlier insects. And hungry bandits wait out in the desert for little children to snack on, he said. The boy led us to the camel barn where we would be working. It was big and airy, long and rectangular. 10 camels here, the boy said, although no camels were in the barn. You take care of them. Make certain the water and food troughs are clean. Always water, brush them, no bugs, feed them special food, take them out, bring them back. He pointed to the shovels. Go to work now. He sounded like a native speaker to our tongue, yet his words came in spurts, as though he had forgotten how to speak. You, he tugged at my sleeve. I showed you, you showed them. We walked to the end of the barn and into a room that was cooler than the rest of the barn, which meant they somehow had electricity out here. Isn't that strange? We didn't have electricity in our place next to Rubel, but these people had electricity here for their camels. The boy showed me huge bins of barley, oats, dates, and greens, plus large glass bottles of pills. The boy put barley, oats, dates, and several pills into a big blue bucket. Out of one of the smaller bins, he pulled a bulb of garlic and dropped it into the strange meal. He put the bucket under a faucet and squirted a creamy liquid into it. He stirred the concoction with a stick and then carried it to one of the camel troughs and tipped it in. Next, he dropped a pile of greens next to the barley mash. 2 times a day for the camels. If you eat, you die. Poison, only for camels. Now you. We went back to the bins and I tried to emulate what the boy had just done. I got it exactly right. I have Ami to thank for that. All those times I watched her cook. The boy showed us the saddles and halters and told us we had to keep them clean, organized, and ready to use. When the boy finished, Zaid came in and screamed at us in a language I did not understand. This sent us running out the direction that he pointed, toward a training track. Several camels ran around the track that was just a place in the sand marked off by a kind of fence. The camels rocked back and forth when they ran, Umar, which I'm sure you noticed if you are somewhere like this, although I pray you are somewhere safer. On the back of each of these camels was a young boy clinging to the strap around the animal's hump. Compared to the huge animals, the boys looked so tiny. A white truck drove alongside the fence while a man hung out the window screaming at the boys. I did not have long to watch. Zaid kicked and pushed me until I understood what he wanted. I took the rope of one camel and started back to the barn. Zaid screamed at me until I held the ropes of three of these giants. I didn't have time to notice anything about the camels. I was too busy trying to understand Zaid and not get kicked by him. I knew he could speak our language because he had earlier, but now he refused. In the chaos that ensued, I figured out the food needed to be ready for the camels by the time they returned to the barn. They ate while we brushed them down. Then we had to make certain the saddles were dry as well as dust and bug free. This may not sound like much, but these animals were so big and we were so small, none of them knew what we were doing. We were quite disorganized. After a while, other boys came and watched, then laughed at us. It was the hottest time of the day, and I felt sick to my stomach from lack of food and water. The camels had a peculiar smell. I can't describe it truly, like sweat, sour milk, and a damp room, I suppose. One vomited in Talat's direction, and he screamed. Then he cleaned it up. He's a good boy. Finally, we finished our work, and we returned to eat with the other new boys. Most of them were too tired to cry. We sat huddled beneath what little shade the shacks provided. After we ate, we went back to the barn and kept working. By night, I was ready to sleep. I noticed the boys seemed more tired than I was, even Yusuf, who was bigger than the younger boys. I decided it was because they were boys and they had been used to being spoiled. Even though their parents were poor, I felt superior for my endurance. Until I remembered that you, my dear brother, are also a poor, pampered boy. Then I took a few of the dates from my pouch and passed them around to the 4 boys with me. Malik and Sulman are brothers from a village near the mountains in our country. They had been playing near their home when 2 passing tradesmen offered them fruit. When the brothers awakened, they were far from home in a strange city on their way here. The smugglers told them their parents were dead. My parents are dead too, Talat said when the brothers told us their story. Did the smugglers tell you that? I asked. He nodded. None of your parents are dead, I said. You were stolen. I wanted to tell the boys I would figure out a way to get them home, but I knew I could not promise such a thing. I have an idea about tomorrow, I said. We kept bumping into each other when we were trying to do things today. Malik and Talat are too small to carry those heavy buckets, so I think they should take the hay and greens to the camels while we're getting the mash. Here's how we can do it. There are 5 buckets, right? It'll be like preparing a meal. We'll line up the buckets, and one of us will put in the grains, dates, and garlic. Those are all in bins. The other person will drop in the pills. The third person will squirt in the milk or whatever it is. Then we'll each take a bucket to a camel. The first one back will grab the 4th bucket, the second one the 5th bucket. The third person will start preparing the next 5 buckets with 3 buckets there now empty. Does that make sense? The boys stared at me. I'll show you tomorrow, I said. Then the 3 stronger boys, me, Suleiman, and Yusuf, will clean up the dung while Talat and Malik brush the camels. You could reach using the stools? They nodded. As it grew darker, the men I had seen throughout the day disappeared. Perhaps they stayed in apartments in the barns, or they had better shacks somewhere. I didn't know. We ate our meager meals of bread and runny beans, brought to us by a man in a truck with a pot, a ladle, and a common plate. As we finished, I heard something that sent shivers through my body. It was the sound of feet running through sand. I remembered that sound, or one like it, from when we lived in the village, when the men came after me. Only I had been the one running. Now my heart raced. Quickly, I said. Inside. I ran into the shack and felt around in the dark for something to put up across the entrance, or at least for something sharp we could use for protection. I found only sand and blanket, and quiet. The 4 boys became so quiet. Outside I heard a squeal like an animal, only I knew it was a boy. In the corner I whispered, maybe they'll think we're gone. If they come after us, Yusuf said, try to gouge out their eyes and crush their testicles. Right, yes, I said. We crouched down as a group and pressed ourselves up against the back wall. Talat started to cry. You must be quiet, little Talat, I said, putting my arm across his shoulder. We will do our best to protect you, but for now you must be quiet. Outside someone screamed. I thought I heard fists on flesh, a peculiar quiet thudding. I closed my eyes and tried not to remember the sounds from the village. How quiet everything had been except for me screaming and then whimpering. Whatever was happening out in that night, it could not happen to me. I couldn't live through it again. This time, I would not survive once they knew my secret. Please let Umar be safe, I prayed. Please let Umar be safe. The night grew quiet again. The 5 of us stayed together for a long while in the corner. Then we moved away, each to a blanket, and fell asleep. I awakened pre-dawn to sand in my face and screams in my ear. I sat up gasping. One of the older boys from yesterday yelled and kicked at us. He too now spoke another language. We ran to the barn. Once there, the older boy disappeared. I reminded the 2 smaller boys that they were going to start by feeding the greens to the camels. The rest of us began cooking breakfast. Suleiman and Yusuf quickly caught on to my idea, and we fed the camels in no time. The 2 smaller boys cleaned and brushed the camels while the rest of us shoveled away the dung. 3 older boys came and put saddles on 5 of the camels and led them away. We were allowed to go back to our shack, where someone came by with bread and beans again. We sat on the sand with the other boys. 3 of them had bruises on their faces. What happened? I asked quietly. What do you think happened? One of them said. The other boys showed us who is boss of this camp. Your turn will come. Then the 5 of them moved away from us and ate by their shack. We returned to the barn and cleaned it. Then we brushed the camels. During the hottest part of the day, when most of the boys napped, I went around to the camp looking for you, Umar. I ran from shack to shack and looked inside to see if you were there. Many boys were sleeping, but some were not, and I saw things I never want to see again. Some bigger boys beat smaller boys. They were so quiet, these beatings. Just the sound of flesh against flesh. And some of the older boys attacked the smaller boys the way those men in the village attacked me. The little boys could not escape, just as I could not. I wanted to save them, Umar. I did, but I could not risk getting caught, so I ran back to our shack, went inside, and cried quietly. I hoped the big boys would not leave scars on the bodies of the little boys like the men in the village had left on me. I hoped their bodies would not be covered with little broken wounds for the rest of their lives as a constant reminder of what had happened to them. That is not a happy way to live. I realized then how foolish I was to come here. It was going to happen to me again, just as it had in the village, only this time I would not live. I was certain of it. And one of these boys who were hurting other boys. They had all once been sweet children. Now I want you to think about this and think if this is true. This next part she says. The evil things they did now were not their fault. They had come here when they were so young, and now they knew no other way of life. We'll talk about it later. How was I going to keep it from happening to me and the 4 boys who were with me? Once again I was exhausted when night came, and the boys were worse off than I was. I gave them the last of the dates. Then the air grew still. We heard the sound of feet running over sand, saw shadows moving across the desert like ghosts coming to claim their victims. We ran into the shack. I had borrowed 3 of the sticks that we used to stir the mash. If someone discovered the temporary theft, we would be severely beaten, so I had to remember to put them back. I handed one to each of the older boys and kept one for myself. Again, we heard the sounds of thuds, crying, a scream. It sounded closer than it had the night before. When it was quiet again, Talat wept. I want my Ami, he said. I know, I said. I could feel the other voice next to me shivering. They're going after the new boys, Yusuf said. Tomorrow night it'll be us. I know, I said. Talat leaned up against me, his tiny body trembling. Let's think of something else, I said. We're safe now. For a while. How about a story? Maybe that'll help us relax so we can think about what we can do tomorrow night. Have you heard the story of Abu Hassan? It was the first story that came to mind, Umar, because I told it to you a few weeks after Baba died. He loved telling that story. There was a man, Abu Hassan, who left the wandering life to become a merchant, I said. He was very good. He only sold the softest silks and the most magnificent carpets and the headiest perfume. He became a very rich man and decided it was time to marry. An old woman who does those things found him a wife who was very beautiful. He opened up his house and invited friends to a magnificent feast. They had rice of many different colors and sherbets of many different flavors. They ate roasted lamb and even, I leaned down close to Talat's ear and said, roasted camel. The night wore on, and finally it was time for Abu Hassan to go to the bridal chamber where his wife awaited him. The men all shouted for him to go, so he got up from his chair and something terrible happened. What? Suleiman asked. Did his friends attack him? Did his bride run away? Yusuf asked. He found out his parents had died, Talat said. No, what happened was far worse, I said. Abu Hassan rose from his chair and he let go a fart. Oh, the embarrassment. Abu Hassan's guests all pretended that they had heard nothing. Abu Hassan hurried away as though he was going to his bride after all. But instead he left the house, got on his horse, and rode away crying all the while until he reached the water, where he got on a ship and sailed away to a foreign land. In this strange land, Abu Hassan did well again, making friends with many a great man. But after 10 years, he longed for home. He could not bear another day away from his beloved homeland. Without a word to anyone, he left and headed for his native land. He went through many hardships. He had to travel over mountains. He lost his money. He nearly starved. He nearly died of thirst. He went through one terrible day to the next until he was looking down on the hills of his home. He was so happy. However, Abu Hassan was still concerned about the coming home. Would people remember? How could they? It had been 10 years. Nevertheless, he stayed disguised for 7 days and 7 nights, while he walked around town listening and watching. One day, he happened to be sitting outside a home when he heard a young girl inside inquire, Mother, can you tell me the day I was born so that I may have my fortune told? Her mother said, That is easy, child. You were born on the night when Abu Hassan farted at his wedding feast. Upon hearing those words, Abu Hassan jumped up and ran away again, saying, My fart has become a date that will be remembered until the end of time. He returned to the land of his exile and there remained until the end of his life. Talat had stopped shaking. He lay his head in my lap asleep. Yusuf picked him up, put him on his blanket in the sand, and then we all lay down. As I closed my eyes, I heard Suleiman whispering, It will be a date remembered until the end of time. He and his brother giggled softly. I smiled and hoped you were safe and well, Umar.
The first part is